Hello and welcome to this session. This is Professor Farhat, in which we will discuss data loss prevention, a topic that we need to be familiar with for the CPA exam. Data loss prevention, or for short DLP. The DLP, think about data loss. What are we trying to prevent? We're trying to prevent losses. Now, how could losses happen? How can we lose data? Well, data could be stolen. Data could be erased by mistake. It could be lost through human error. So the key is to prevent that loss. So data loss prevention systems are tools used by organizations to identify if there's any loss and block the unauthorized sharing of sensitive data. And why it's important to identify the loss? Because it may take a week, a month before a company figures out that they had a data loss. So that's why they have to be proactive in determining if there's any data loss up front. Data loss prevention is also called data leak prevention. Basically the same concept. We are looking to prevent leakage. We are looking to prevent loss of our data. Again, that data could be stolen by an individual. And stolen doesn't mean physically steal it. You can steal it over the network, over the email, through USBs, through various methods. So the system works across various digital channels, including emails, instant messaging, file transfer, covering a wide range of protocols and methods to ensure comprehensive protection. So we're looking at all the methods, all the doors, all the ports, all the exits where this information could lead us to detect what? To detect sensitive information. DLP system often rely on specific techniques like pattern matching or word recognition to kind of analyze what's happening. By analyzing the structure or sequence of data within files, these systems can flag potentially sensitive information that matches a predefined pattern. So this is what we're looking for. We're looking for something that looks like a credit card, an account number, a social security number, some sensitive information that we possess. This is what we will discuss in this session, the purpose of DLP and what are the best techniques and best practices for companies when they're implementing their DLP program. Let's go ahead and get started. Before we proceed any further, I have a public announcement about my company, farhatlectures.com.
Farhat Accounting Lectures is a supplemental educational tool that's going to help you with your CPA exam preparation as well as your accounting courses. My CPA material is aligned with your CPA review course such as Becker, Roger, Wiley, Gleam, Miles. My accounting courses are aligned with your accounting courses broken down by chapter and topics. My resources consist of lectures, multiple choice questions, true-false questions, as well as exercises. Go ahead, start your free trial today.
Purpose, basically, you have to have a DLP program because you want to protect personal information, specifically personal identifiable information, PII. You want to protect your financial information, the financial information of your customers as well as your company. You want to protect your intellectual property and any form of sensitive data from breaches, from leakage, from unintentional loss due to human error. So that's the purpose of a DLP. Now we will add to that you have your own greed. You want to protect your data, that's fine, but you might have to do so. The importance of DLP has grown with the increase of data breaches and regulatory requirements like the GDPR, HIPAA, and other regulatory rules that mandate that you protect the data of your customers, which demand stringent data protection standards. And that's why DLP is a big deal, and it's being tested now on the CPA exam. Just to kind of give you the big picture before we dive into the best practices, for example, to adhere to regulation like HIPAA or PCI DSS for payment card information, or the GDPR for personal protection data for the EU citizen, DLP solution might look for data pattern indicative of credit card numbers. So you would have a system that searching for 16-digit numbers that follow a particular pattern. For example, Visa card always start with 47. I'm not saying that's the case, 16, but they always start with the first 4 digits. If you don't believe me, pull your Visa card and look at them. They all start with the first, same 4 digits. Then the remainder are different. So we're looking for a pattern. When such a pattern is detected, the DLP system will either block the transmission of this data, so they will flag it, or encrypt it to ensure it's not accessible to unauthorized individual or entities. Maybe we do email credit card or account information, but when we do so, we automatically encrypt them. We have the system. What's encryption? Making sure if they were intercepted, no one can read them without the decrypted key. This proactive approach helps organizations prevent data breaches and most importantly, comply with legal and regulatory standard, HIPAA, GDPR, and other regulatory rules by ensuring sensitive information does not leave the organization network without proper authorization. Now, what we're going to do to learn about the DLP, we're going to look at the best practices and techniques that companies should implement. And we're going to list them as follow. First, they have to have what's called data identification. They have a policy creation and management. And within that, we're going to talk about centralized DLP policy. They have to monitor their data. They have to have an incident response and reporting system. And they have to educate their employees about the importance of data leakage or data loss. We're going to cover each one of these topics separately. Starting with data identification, and that's usually the first step in a DLP strategy, is to identify what information are you protecting, because not all information is equal. Certain information is more important than other. That's one. Two, you want to know what information do you have. So if you don't know what you are protecting, how are you going to protect something if you don't know it exists? So this involves scanning and classifying data across the organizational digital environment. Now, sensitive data is identified based on predefined criteria. It could be account number, social security, date of birth. That's sensitive information. And the classification process can be based on content, looking for specific pattern or keywords. The classification process could be based on context, the location of this data, how we're applying this data, and the process associated with the data. Or the classification could be based on who's using this data, identifying data accessed or used by specific roles within the organization. For example, a healthcare organization uses DLP software to scan documents across its network for patterns that matches social security numbers and medical records number. So the system flags documents containing personal health information at a category of sensitive information that require protection under HIPAA. So they know that this category, this personal health information, is critical. It's highly sensitive. Therefore, they ask the DLP software to scan everything. Everything means the document, the data, for this information and make sure it's protected, it's encrypted if need to be transferred. Once the sensitive data is identified, the organization must define how this data is handled. Basically, we need to have a policy, and one centralized policy is preferable. We'll talk about that shortly. This involving creating DLP policies that specify what action are permitted or prohibited with the data and under what circumstances. Policies are based on maybe regulatory compliance need, like in HIPAA situation, healthcare, business requirement based on our business need, or based on how we are managing our risk. And they can range from simple rules like prohibiting the transmission of credit card information to complex criteria involving roles, data contacts, and encryption requirement. But we have to have a policy. For example, an e-commerce company establishes a DLP policy that automatically encrypts all outbound email containing credit card information. Also, the policy prevents these emails from being sent to addresses outside the company domain, so we can only send them within the company, mitigating the risk of financial data breach. Talking about the policy, a centralized data policy is more preferable. Centralizing data loss prevention across the whole organization to create a unified program. Everyone is on the same page that oversees and coordinates data protection strategy across all departments. And this approach will ensure what? Consistent application of data security policies, because we have one policy that applies to everyone across all departments, and it's a cohesive defense against data breach. So it established consistent data protection standard, It's across departmental collaboration. Everyone is collaborating on the same policy, and we have a central oversight, a dedicated team or data protection officer that sees the whole program for every department, and this makes it easy for compliance. All the communication is streamlined, enhanced decision making and incident response through efficient communication, because everyone goes back to the central room to report what's happening. So it's easy to communicate. Also, we have integrated technology solution. By implementing uniform DLP policies across all departments, we're optimizing the infrastructure and enhancing security measure, and hopefully reducing cost as a byproduct. So we have to have a centralized policy. Also, we have to monitor the data monitoring. Continuous monitoring is essential for DLP because data is moving. This involves real-time scanning of data in use with an application in motion as it moves through the network and at rest, constantly monitoring the data. So monitoring tools analyze data transaction for policy violations such as what? Unauthorized access attempt or attempt to send sensitive data through unsecured channel. Just gonna flag them as soon as this happens. For example, a financial institution uses a DLP to monitor any unusual data transfer pattern. Like what? Like large volume of files being uploaded for an external cloud storage service. Well, there's no need for that. If that's happening, we need to know why. So the system will detect such an attempt and will do what? Will investigate. So the system detects an attempt by an employee to upload a file containing client investment record to a personal cloud storage account and blocks the transfer and investigate why this is needed. Also, we need an incident response and reporting function. Effective DLP policies or solution not only detect the violation, but we need to know how to respond in real time. And this could range from alerts to automatic action like blocking data transfer to quarantine suspicious data for further investigation. Also, a comprehensive reporting capability are critical for auditing, compliance, and improving data protection strategy over time. In case we were audited, what did you do in case of a compliance audit? And also, as we respond and report, we can learn from the incidents, and as we learn, we can strengthen our security procedures. And reports provide insight into the type of data being protected, frequency of policy violation, and trend in data security. Basically, it's the data for us to help us improve our own system. For example, an organization DLP system detects an unauthorized attempt to copy sensitive project into a USB drive. Okay, the system automatically blocks the file transfer and notifies the IT security team. Now, a detailed report, which is a log, logs the incident, including the file name, user identity, date, and time, and we need to investigate this user. Why are they doing so? What's their motivation? What time they're doing it? If there's any pattern, so on and so forth. So this information is used to review security policies and conduct user training. And maybe the user is not aware. This is the time to train them. And talking about training and education and awareness is important, because sometimes that's the best defense. The employees are aware of this, and this way they don't upload financial information into their USB drive. Educating employees about DLP is an important part of a robust data security strategy aimed at fostering a culture of security awareness. And here's a streamlined approach how you should do this. What should you focus on? Value of data. Teach the employees about the type of sensitive data. Remember, we have to classify the data. Let them know this data is important and the impact of a data breach of the organization. So they're aware there are fines, penalties, violations. We could go out of business because of a violation. Let them know about the policies. Ensure employees understand the organization DLP policies. They understand their own roles and the rationale behind these rules, why these rules are important. We could lose money. You could lose your job. We could lose our reputation. And we gotta show them the best practices for handling data, provide guidance on secure data sharing, identifying security threat like phishing, using strong password, and reporting protocols for data breaches. Role-specific training. Tailor training to different roles within the organization, focusing on relevant data handling technique. For example, how a senior manager handles data might be a little bit different than a staff accountant. Engaging training method. Use interactive e-learning, workshops, whatever is needed. Simulations, quizzes to make training engaging. Include regular update to keep pace with evolving cybersecurity threat. And continuous learning, just like continuous monitoring, is important because data breaches are continuous. Therefore, you have to let them know through newsletter, briefing, emails, a dashboard, anything that's necessary. We also have network-based DLP. What is network-based DLP? Well, that's a DLP that's monitoring the network. It scrutinizes outgoing data streams such as emails, file transfer via FTP sites, and direct messages against predefined criteria to catch potential security breaches. Here you're going through the network. When it detects data that should not leave the network, it will block the transfer and log the incidents. And these logs are stored in a database, part of our incident response. We study them, investigate, see what's going on to help security team to analyze and mitigate the risk. So this is network-based DLP. We could also have cloud-based DLP. With the shift toward cloud computing, cloud-based DLP system extend the same principle of network-based to DLP. Just companies move their operation online, ensuring the secure transfer of the sensitive data across the cloud platform and virtual machine becomes crucial. So this type of DLP ensures that data moving within or outside of the cloud infrastructure meet the security policies to do what? To prevent unauthorized data exposure or loss even in a virtual environment. And we have what's called endpoint-based DLP. This category focuses on endpoint of network like laptop, smartphone, printers, USB drives. Endpoint means the user, what the user is using, the endpoint. Endpoint DLP system examine data stored or transmitted to these devices to prevent sensitive information from being transferred to unauthorized devices. So by scanning for specific content, pattern, or file types like multimedia, like MP4, this system can restrict data movement based on the organization policy, and as a result, securing endpoint that could otherwise serve as a leak points for sensitive information. So for example, once you input a USB, this DLP will monitor there's a USB. Why is there a USB in someone's endpoint and someone's laptop? And if they're starting to save data, it might flag it. Let's take a look at this multiple choice question from farhatlectures.com. A financial consultancy is assessing its DLP strategy to ensure compliance with financial regulation. Which of the following is the most effective first step in a DLP strategy? So what is the first step and what's the most effective first step? Implementing a network firewall. We should have a network firewall, but this should be the first step. Let's look at other first step. Encrypting all email communication. That's also another good practice, but this should be the first step. Identifying and classifying sensitive data. That's also important. Would this be the first step? I would say first you want to identify and classify sensitive data. You have the data. Not all the data is the same. Not all the data require the same protection. Not all data will expose you equally. So the first thing you want to do in a DLP policy is what data am I dealing with? Classify its sensitivity. Then I'm going to go ahead, encrypt all the email communication, implement network firewall. I would say C will proceed A and B. I'll take out A and B. D, training employees on phishing threat. That's also a good practice, but that's not the most effective first step in a DLP strategy. The first step is identify and classify sensitive data. Then I will create a policy. I will monitor the data, create secure network, and implement my DLP. What should you do now? You should go to Farhat Lectures, look at additional MCQs. That's going to help you if you're studying for your CPA exam or any other professional certification. Invest in yourself. Good luck. Study hard. Farhat is always here to help, and stay safe.